Hey, this is Evan Marquette's dating and relationship coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast. Today's going to be a great episode. Got a surprise for you if you stick around to the end. I think you're going to enjoy it. The topic is Miranda July's All Fours Selling a Fantasy. Not so secret. I haven't read all fours. I will get to that in a moment. If you are a fan and you've been listening for a while and you haven't shared the love with us yet, please subscribe on Apple. Please subscribe on Spotify. Please leave us a positive review and pay it forward. Share it with a friend, that kind of thing. For those who joined the Love You Bootcamp, evanmarkatz.com/bootcamp, I'm really grateful. We're going to have a great time, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation. And without further ado, I want to tell you about this book that I have not read. It's sitting on my wife's nightstand, so I was able to pilfer it and bring it down. But because I'm a very thorough journalist, I checked out the Google plot summary. Here goes. And Google will summarize everything for you because AI is so wonderful. The narrator is a famous artist and mother who's facing the realities of aging. And by aging, we mean I think she's like 45. She leaves her husband and child at home and takes off on her trip. She only makes it 30 minutes from home before stopping at a roadside motel. There, she has an affair with a fan who works at a rental car office. She returns home and reflects on her trip. Scintillating. Now, this is a huge best-selling book. There are New York Times think pieces being written about it, so it's part of the zeitgeist. I generally don't try to talk about things that I haven't read, but I read something about this book which makes me want to do this podcast. So the book is really basically about pursuing sexual and creative freedom, and we've heard a version of this before. It was called Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it's every single movie starring Nicole Kidman. So my first question is, if the protagonist was a guy, would this book be celebrated? Would it sell as many copies if the man who leaves his wife to explore a life of sexual freedom is like that? That's like a middle-aged man stereotype, like, but it's the worst stereotype. He's not a hero. He's not the guy who's celebrated. Years ago, I made the joke, would we buy a book called Drink, Play, Fuck by Andrew Tate? We would not. So I find this genre, I guess, to be a little bit not baffling. It's not baffling. I know I'm just a guy. I know it's not written for me. I guess I would just say that no one's telling you that you should stay in a bad or dissatisfying relationship. No one's forcing you to be monogamous. You could be ethically non-monogamous. You can leave your husband and have an affair. Men can do this, women can do this. Those shackles have been removed many, many years ago. I guess mine is just a question. It is the act of women acting like 1970s Hugh Hefner, right? For those who are young, he's the Playboy founder who notoriously traded out new blonde girlfriends every couple of years. Is this a good thing? So there's a writer, his name is Freddie DeBoer. He's on Substack. He wrote an amazing piece about this. I'm going to link to it in the show notes, and I'm going to quote liberally from it because he did a far better job than I would tackling this same thing. So this is in quotes, reading verbatim. The question is not whether women have permission to forego long-standing marriages and relationships to pursue a regular churn of sexual and romantic partners in an effort to achieve real satisfaction and happiness. The answer to that was already yes. The more relevant question is, will the women who attempt this actually achieve satisfaction and happiness? And I'm profoundly skeptical. And I condensed his, 2,000 word piece into 5 bullet points, his words. Number one, human beings need each other, and short-term connections based on convenience and immediate pleasure don't produce that kind of support. Number two, we get old. After 45 years old comes 65 years old. It doesn't have to be insulting. It doesn't even have to be negative, but it should come with at least some basic understanding that a generic condition of human existence is that over time, we get less and less attractive. Correspondingly, we have fewer and fewer available partners who we want to have sex with and who want to have sex with us. Number three, there are all manner of lifestyles that are built around the pursuit of endless novelty, such as those centered on drug use, sadomasochism, extreme sports, endless travel. And what happens very, very often is that the pursuit of new experiences becomes in and of itself the boring slog that all of the rest of us experience too. Number four, To make the fantasy reality, the theoretical pool of imaginary dudes must eventually give way to the actual dudes that you'll actually meet, and they will remind you of all the problems that you had with dudes in the first place. And five, the romantic ideal is good. It may be deeply imperfect, but it is worth fighting for. There's a reason people come back to it again and again, despite all the frustration. I suspect a lot of people who consider lifelong serial partnering are doing so while quietly wanting the romantic ideal, one person for life, but the pain of looking for it has driven them into rejecting it as a form of self-defense, rationalizing unhappiness. So, I think that's pretty profound, and I think it speaks for a lot of my thoughts about it. Right before I was supposed to record this podcast, I told my wife I was going upstairs to borrow the book, and her first reaction is, "Guys have always done this. What's the big deal? Now it's women's turn." And so we talked about it for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, "Why are we talking about this on the staircase? Why don't you just come on the podcast?" So, for the first time in 21 years of doing this, I'd like you to meet my wife. Come on, Bridget.
Getting a chair over. Hi. Hello.
Bridget, this is everybody.
Hi, everybody.
We talked last night about how I've never used your name on a podcast before, so now you've been outed
from anonymity.
outed from anonymity.
Outed from anonymity.
Okay, well, so the reason we're doing this is because you have life experience where you left a marriage.
Right.
Not this one, as far as I could tell.
Nope, still in it. Still happy, still in it.
But you left a marriage and you had your own, I don't know if it was all fours experience.
So I have to be honest too. I haven't read the book yet. I'm in a book club. This was, I think, gifted to me. I have not read it yet. When Evan found it, I was like, "Oh, is that my book? Okay, cool." So I also don't know the book, but when Evan told me what it was about, I said, "Oh yeah, like an Eat, Pray, Love." And I did say, well, women haven't been known to do this, but I'm sure they have been doing it, but now it's just being talked about. And why not? I'm not. And his point was, but is it a good thing? Are people more satisfied? And I said, I don't think they are necessarily more satisfied, but I had a very similar experience, as he pointed out. I was married before that marriage ended. My husband kind of freaked out a little bit, had his own, early midlife crisis and said, "I don't know if I'm made for this, for being married." And I was devastated. And I, happened to be in some good company with some girlfriends who were going through a similar thing in their marriage. So we all talked about it, and we kind of came to the conclusion marriage doesn't work. Nobody's happy. Everybody lies about being happy, because that's where we were in that moment. We were very unhappy people in a marriage. And so when my marriage ended, I did what a lot of people do, and I went out and got in touch with my inner slut. And
everybody else did too.
Everybody else got to touch my inner slut. Evan likes to tease me about what was it? What did you call it? Like Bridget Does Europe or something?
Oh, you had the T-shirt with the
yes,
the
it was like a tour.
Oh, Rotterdam.
Right. Oh my goodness, Dublin. I did have a job that took me to other countries for work, and it for the first time I'd been single. I had never had this job while I was single, and I made good use of it, and I had a great time. But I had a great time in that context of I don't want any attachments. I'm not going to fall in love again. Marriage apparently isn't, might work for some people. It wasn't working for me. I'm very, very unhappy that my marriage ended. And so I'm just going to go have fun. And I did. But at some point, I don't know that this is true for everyone, but at some point that's not satisfying anymore. So I think it serves a purpose. It gets something out of your system. And I wasn't ready to have a committed relationship at that point. I was very sad and broken. I would not have made for a good date. I would have not have made for a good girlfriend at the time. But once I was ready to settle down, I was through with that. I was like, okay, that was satisfying for the very brief moment. It was satisfying. It is not a long-term plan.
And so that's, to me, that's the point. It's not whether he's a stud, she's a slut. It's okay for middle-aged men to leave their wives for younger women, and not okay for women to leave their middle-aged husbands for younger men.
Mhm.
We're not even talking about any double standards.
Right.
It's probably why people often think happily married people are smug, because it becomes kind of hard to understand. Do you want to be the old guy in the club? Do you really want to cycle out new people?
Yeah. Do you
Because
want to be the cougar for the rest of your life? Like how long can you do that?
right,
You can do that from 38 to maybe 58 if you're Demi Moore.
but I'm saying it's not. I think the hard part is to have this conversation without it being judgmental.
Right.
No one would ever advocate that someone stay in a dead-end, depressing or abusive marriage, or that it's, okay for him and not okay for her. It is the idea that constantly seeking novelty
Right.
as a lifestyle
Hmm.
is the path to the greatest fulfillment. And
Right.
there was that study that showed that people seeking novelty don't make for the best long-term partners for that very reason.
Sure.
The people who are always on to the next big thing, it's
Hmm.
not terribly surprising that that marriage might not last. Now, there might be someone's personality is, well, I'm a novelty seeker. That's what I do. We were watching F-Boy Island last night,
Right.
right? And
Right.
she was the thrill seeker. She was the
Hmm.
the snowboarder,
Snowboarder,
right? And
right. The extreme
you
sports.
can just tell she's going to make the bad decisions
Right.
because the
Yeah.
thrill is worth it. And then again, at what point do you say this, as the piece I read,
Hmm.
is exhausting? It's not fulfilling me. It's just novelty. For us, part of the joy of having children, as much as it is an anchor and a responsibility and
Sure.
time and energy and money
Hmm.
intensive, is how many Four Seasons do you go to have $22 cocktails and say, well, this is a fulfilling life?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, isn't there like a point where, I don't know, if you had sex with 100 people in 100 hotel rooms, isn't it like,
Okay, the number wasn't 100, I'm just saying.
well, not you,
One,
one.
one could.
Yeah, this is true. We don't know each other's number.
That's true. We don't talk about that, but we're not at all shy about talking about past
That there are
relationships.
numbers.
There are numbers. Numbers exist, and we talk about we know each other's past funny stories, even funny sex stories with other people, and that doesn't make us uncomfortable. I think I don't know, decided a long time ago the number really didn't matter, but the stories could be funny, could be informative. Some are sad.
You know more of my stories than I know of your stories.
I don't have that many
I feel like
stories,
that's
though.
intentional.
No, no, no. I don't have that many actual stories. You had girlfriends who did this or girlfriends who did that. I had, something like four boyfriends in my entire life,
Yeah.
right? Because I was
Serial
really,
monogamous.
thank you, serial
You
monogamous.
could have been a material
I
monogamous
could have been
too.
a material.
I just go on to
I
rich
just kept
guys.
finding those. I never found a rich guy. I was
Yeah.
looking for a rich guy. I couldn't find. No, I was a serial monogamist. Had long-term relationships. 3 years, 4 years, 7 years with people. But it was that one break after being married where I did go a little crazy and lived out my college fantasies that I never did in college. I never did it in college.
So
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 it was
then
kind of doing that in my early 30s.
so to bring it back to the topic du jour,
Sure.
do you know anybody who has a fulfilling life as a single person who thrives with the lack of attachment and the variety that is extolled in this book? I think of my single guy friends,
Hmm.
and I think most of them want relationships. They're avoidant attachment style, and so
Yeah.
they have trouble choosing and maintaining them. But I don't know too many people who pursue this lifestyle, but that could just be a reflection of
Our circle of
us. Yeah.
friends or our circle of acquaintances.
Does
I
this does
agree
this
with
does
you.
this have a good track record? I guess is my question.
I don't think it's a long-term plan. I'm not even sure these books are saying it should be. I don't know. I read Eat, Pray, Love. I haven't read this book yet. I don't think they're even saying it should be. It could be a wake up. It could be a wake up to tell you, oh, the relationship I'm in isn't right for me, or a wake up to appreciate that relationship and
Mm.
say, it is like the Four Seasons. Like we still like to go to a Four Seasons and spend $22, but we're going to do it maybe once a year now. It's not going to be. all the time because we have roots, we have planted roots, we have a relationship, we have the mundane things that one does when one's in a relationship, like, oh, we have to go get that door fixed, or we've got to pick out curtains for this room, or oh, it's more kid sports this weekend.
I think they want to hear
That's
us talk about
okay.
sex.
They do probably.
Tell us more about the mundane things that we
The
have to do.
mundane things. I'm really selling long-term relationships. No, but what I mean is, I don't think even in these books, the excitement of that, the flings were intended as a long-term plan. I don't think that was even in Eat, Pray, Love. I think she ended up with a guy she met for a short time, but it's like
Right.
you want those connections. You
I
want to be in someone you can rely on to do things with that aren't always the most exciting things.
I think that these, and it's not wrong, but I think these books are written at a moment in time, right? They
Mhm.
capture a moment in time.
Yes.
Uh, and it's the time of liberation,
Mhm.
but it's not a prescriptive lifestyle. And,
Right.
but I think in the media, people are talking about it as a prescriptive lifestyle. I mean, I can't, I mean,
Mm.
I'm doing a series of podcasts about it this month
Mhm.
about how I think I even told you after work, there was a client who said she feels uncomfortable saying she wants to get married in her dating app
Oh,
profile.
yeah.
That was another podcast I just did.
Sure.
And I feel like there's all this sort of like unshackling of old institutions,
Mm.
everything. We don't
Mhm.
believe in media, we don't believe in government, we don't believe in medicine, we don't believe in, and if marriage becomes just this other thing we don't believe in, or monogamy becomes this other thing we don't believe in
Mhm.
because um, whatever. I mean, again, I feel like it's almost like a societal Kool-Aid. I've got more and more clients questioning it, and I think it's fine to question it. You can ultimately do what you want. But per the piece I just read, I think there's a reason that people will always come back to it.
Sure. I agree. Like I was saying, I don't think yes, it's in the media a lot now. Yes, people are breaking down institutions. Marriage is an institution, so why wouldn't that get thrown out? But I think that again, this is not a long-term strategy. I think it's a burst of energy, or it's again something that wakes you up in
Could you
your
could
relationship.
could you save this burst of energy until I'm dead?
I don't need it. I did it. That's the point is I was prepped for you. I already
You,
did
you,
all
you
that
got all
stuff.
the good sex out of your
I
system, all
this
the good
is
sex out of your
I'm
system before you met
ready.
me.
I'm ready for the boring marriage sex.
I'm just the guy to deliver.
Right. I know. That's what I was thinking. No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I think that it's important to have a healthy sex life with your husband. But and we're also not judging anybody who says, no, this is the lifestyle for me. I just think on the whole, for most people, it's not going to be satisfying in the long term. I think it could be satisfying for a few months. It could be satisfying for a summer trip in Europe, i.e., not saying I did that. I'm just saying it's a thing that people could do if you're doing it ethically and you're not leading anybody on. I think why not have a great time? But to build something, to build a life, unless your job literally is you're a foreign correspondent, you're always going to be traveling, you're never going to be able to plant roots. You're in the military, maybe you don't want to plant roots because you do travel too much, or you just have such an exciting or dangerous job. There's reasons not to plant roots, but I think most people are a little bit happier when they have a person, even if that person isn't married to them, even if it's just a long-term
I
arrangement.
think part of the premise of this work is that people want to be seen and they want to be known and they want to
Sure.
have their lives witnessed,
Hmm.
to build memories with someone.
Mm.
Uh, I just don't know if there's a great substitute for it. I'm thinking of a good friend of ours who will probably not be listening to this, who left California and moved to Texas.
Hmm.
And I remember visiting him there,
Sure.
and his life was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
He's going out a lot socially. He's got a lot of friends. He's got a lot of younger friends. He's
Hmm.
untethered by housewife kids.
Hmm.
And I went there and I had a really great time visiting. And
Sure.
I came home feeling, God, that has to be really lonely. Really glad to be back to my mundane
Hmm.
domestic life here
Right. Some
because
predictability.
because nobody he's hanging out with really, they like him, but they don't
They don't
care
really
for him.
know him
They don't
either.
know him. They don't
Yeah.
care for him. It's a very transient thing.
And even if he made some deep friendships, this person we're talking about actually wants the marriage. He wants the marriage and the kids.
Right.
He just hasn't been able to, and he's attractive,
I
wealthy,
don't want to
has
go off
all.
that. I don't want to go too
But the
far.
point is there's no reason for him not to be other than kind of getting in his own way
But it's not,
about
that's
locking
not
it
the
in.
point of the story. The point of the story is
Mhm.
not about him. It's
Yes.
about the whether cycling new people through, which I did in my 20s and 30s. You
Mhm.
had your period post-divorce that you did that, whether that is long-term satisfying, because that from what I
Yeah,
understand is some of the message of these books and these movies of, and again,
sure.
we could joke about all the movies, but
Yeah.
there's a whole spate of movies
Hmm.
of older women, younger men,
Sure.
sadomasochistic relationships, this being the sign of liberation.
Mhm. Sure, sure. And again, no judgment, but my point in you bringing him up and me saying, yes, he actually does want that long-term thing because I think he instinctively knows as much fun as he's having being untethered, he's still looking for that. He still would like to have that because having that, he's jealous of what we have.
I think it's what you do, at least what I did to keep busy until I
Yeah,
found it. It
yeah.
was like I was
It's a
content. Yeah,
placeholder.
I was content with it, but it wasn't desirable, and eventually it felt empty. And there was the point where I stopped having sex with anybody
Yeah,
for a couple of years because I was
right.
like I don't want to be that guy. Like
Mhm.
I just made the conscious choice to stop
Yeah.
in the 2 years before I met you.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
uh,
remember we literally had that conversation the first night we met.
Yeah, you're like, I want to sleep with you. I'm like,
Okay,
hey,
by the way,
that's really aggressive,
that is fake news.
lady. What was your
Why don't
name?
you tell me your name?
What was your name again? Hey, there are rules. I
Okay,
call it sex exclusivity. I'm a
that
dating
I'm
coach,
glad I'm
and
here to
I'm
defend myself because that did not happen. But you did mention somehow organically in the conversation that you don't sleep with women who were not your girlfriend, and I said, really? That's a thing? That's a thing guys do? I mean, I
it's
know it's a
not.
thing women do, but is it a thing guys do? And I think I remember even maybe a friend of yours saying, "Oh, that's really good. That would really get him to want to sleep with you." And you're like, "No, but no, you don't go in. It's not a ploy. It's not supposed to be my game. This is how I feel. This is my goal is to be in a long-term relationship, have a girlfriend. That's who I want to sleep with." And I bet it was hard sometimes. I bet it was hard because there were probably people you wanted to sleep with, and you're like, "But that's just not a person I'm going to date."
Yeah, I didn't want to be the guy who would sleep with someone and then slow fade or ghost.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it had any integrity, and it's
Mhm.
not like I needed to rack up
Right,
numbers. So it just felt
right.
like the higher integrity thing to do. We're going off
We
course.
are because you've always wanted that. I think we are going off course because the point is, can you be a person who seeks novelty, doesn't want to be in a long-term relationship, can sleep with whomever they want, live wherever they want, go wherever they want, have no ties? I think you can. I think you can, and you probably live a really exciting life. But I do think at some point you might, I mean, it's like anything. You
maybe
choose one thing, you miss the other
the
thing.
grass is always greener.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's probably something for them. But if you've already, if you've already experienced it,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know any single person who wouldn't love to have someone that they really loved.
Yeah.
Like I don't,
Love. Yeah.
like it's not that most marriages we don't look at other people's marriages with envy. I don't think most marriages are happy. So it's not like marriage is a panacea. But
No, but we're also just talking, we're not even talking about the institution of marriage. We're talking about having a partner long term. And often that means marriage, but even just having someone you can rely on and have sex with. Like that's the other thing is you could have a best friend who is your ride or
we
die.
missed last week. I wasn't feeling that good.
Oh, I know. We're gonna have to double up. So
Do you really think that's going to happen?
that has
It's
happened a handful of times.
it's Friday night. Do you think that Friday and Saturday night are on tap? They're
I
going to be
don't
like,
know.
no,
We
we
just
just
did
did it
this
last
last
night.
night. I'm tired.
Right.
Making it sound very boring. Anybody out there listening is going to be
We're
like,
not trying to sell it.
but we are the ones that we couple and we're very, very fine with that. It's perfect for us because we're not just roommates, we're not just friends. We are in a marriage, and a marriage where we have sex. We know lots of friends who do not. Weirdly, they admit this to us. Why? I don't know why. I think it's funny that we plan it, but I'm like, well, when was the last time you had? Oh, we like to just be spontaneous. I'm like, so 3 months ago is spontaneous? Like, come on.
Yeah, it was spontaneous and it was
It
hot.
was spontaneous,
And it
hot,
was
and I
last summer.
remember it fondly. I'll never forget
All
that
right,
July.
let me bring it back here.
Okay.
So now you know.
Yeah, you know.
This is it.
It's a dollar.
This is my wife, Bridget. My name is Evan Markatz. This is the Love You podcast. I almost forgot what I'm doing here because we went
Went
on
off
so
the
many
rails a
tangents,
little
but
bit.
I think I signed up for this. Like when I married you, it's like life is just going to be a series of tangents
I
between
will always get back to the
coherent,
story.
coherent stories.
But I have some side stories I want to tell you in the meantime.
Maybe you should have your own podcast, and it won't have a title because no one,
No, it'll just be
no,
called Tangent.
no one will know what you're talking about.
Hey, quick people will catch up.
Right. If you want anything resembling this, I don't know that you do.
Maybe you don't.
It's entirely possible this is the last time you'll listen, but if so, it's been a good run. My name is Evan Markatz. This is my wife, Bridget. This has been the Love You podcast. If you want love and laughter and once a week sex for the rest of your life, it's
Right?
not, it's really, if it's good sex, it's really fine.
Yeah.
Go to evanmarkatz.com/now, book a time with me, and we'll figure out the coaching package that's right for you and get you your person who you could have a bunch of inside jokes that nobody really gets. Yeah?
Yes. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.